predicting neutralization products. In this worksheet, there are a few different parts to it, and the first one you're going to fill in the missing salt, acid, or base, depending on what it says the parent acid, parent base, or salt is. So in this first one, it's already all done for you. The second one, you have to look at this acid and this base and determine what salt was formed. In number 3, you're going to look at the base and the salt that was formed to determine the acid that reacted with the base to form this salt. So what these are all talking about is neutralization reactions, and in your reading materials it explains on this first page here. First it goes over naming acids and bases, because you do need to remember how to do that from your other packet. And then here it talks about the products of an acid-base reaction. And we did acid-base reactions way back in packet 3. And what I want you to review here is that anytime you have an acid reacting with a base, the H and the OH, the H from the acid and the OH from the base, will combine to form water. And the other parts of the acid and base, the positive ion of the base, the negative ion from the acid, will join together to form a salt. So it's called a neutralization reaction because we know that water is neutral and salts are neutral. So instead of having an acid and a base, now we have two neutral compounds when we're done. So here you can see that HCl reacts with NaOH. The H and OH combine to make H2O, and we're left with Na and Cl. Na has a positive 1 charge, Cl has a negative 1 charge, so they cancel out their charges and they can form a compound of just Na and Cl. Down here is another example where we take HCl again and we react it with CaOH2. Again, the H and OH combine to make H2O, and then we're left with Ca as our positive ion, which is going to go first, and Cl as our negative ion, which goes second. So I take my Ca, which has a +2 charge, and Cl, which has a -1 charge. Because +2 and -1 do not cancel out to 0, I'm going to use my crisscross method and cross them over so that the 2 becomes the subscript for Cl, and my 1 from my charge of Cl becomes the subscript for Ca, but remember we don't write 1s as subscripts. So CaCl2 would be a neutral compound that could form from calcium and chlorine. You do have to do this on your worksheet. You have to make sure that you look up the charges of the positive and negative ions and cross them over if need be to make a neutral compound. In this case, we also had to put a 2 in front of HCl and in front of H2O to balance the equation. So when you're doing yours, here again find your positive ion from the base and your negative ion from the acid. Look up the 2 charges, cross them over if you need to make a neutral compound. Then here, when you're trying to find the acid, you know that your acid will start with H. It may start with 1 H or 2 H's or 3 H's, so make sure that you look up the charge of that negative ion that's combined with it to know how many H's you need to put here, because each hydrogen ion has a +1 charge and it needs to cancel out your negative charge. So do that for these. Do the same thing for your bases. Make sure that you use the correct number of hydroxides when you make your compounds, because you do need to make sure, like as an example for this one, Mg is a +2, so we needed 2 -1 hydroxides to cancel it out. So be very careful with that. In part B, all you have to do is figure out which of these neutralization reactions would form which salt product. So you're just going to match A through H with 1 through 8. Down here in part C, you're going to combine an acid and base and tell which salt would be formed. So take this acid, combine with this base. Remember the H and OH form water, so I'm left with Na and Cl, +1 charge, -1 charge, so NaCl works here. Down here we took H2SO4 and NaOH, and we get Na2SO4 here. Alright, so Na is a +1, SO4 is -2, so we had to cross over those two charges to make Na2SO4. Do the same thing in these blanks. Put the acid and base together and make a compound that's appropriate for those two ions. And if you do still have any more questions about how to do this, please come ask.